Every fantasy RPG has a way to hurt the player characters. There's hit points, getting poisoned, even insanity, and so much more. But what happens when your character survives something that's truly horrifying? What are the lasting effects? It could be physically, it could be spiritually, even emotionally. What part of the experience stays with them? I don't think the game mechanics are supposed to create fear. I'm supposed to do that as a dungeon master. I help to create the tension and the fear and the suspense through descriptions, atmosphere, pacing, silence, through letting the players imagine what is just beyond their lantern light. But once the scene is over, most RPGs just move on. But I wanted the PCs inside of my game world to not get away so easily. And that's why I've developed Hearth and Horror, which is included in the Welcome to the Samhain Vale zine. So combat can leave scars on a player character's body, but I wanted horror to do the same thing. I wanted players to look back over a campaign and see all the different scars that they had acquired. Everything they've survived. Not necessarily a list of monsters they killed, but experiences that have marked them and shaped them. Kind of like a collection of tattoos. So take a look at these. Some of these marks of horror are cosmetic. Some are psychological, some are supernatural, some are curses, some even grant strange abilities. None of them simply say, you're frightened and run away, or you get a -2 to this roll. They tell a story. Now, this is just a small sampling. There's 20 lesser marks of horror and 20 greater marks of horror. So a ranger returns from the haunted woods with a streak of gray in her hair. A warrior begins to wake every night in terror, screaming. A healer discovers they can absorb another person's wounds, but only by taking those wounds upon themselves. A hunter grows monstrous claws. They're stronger than before, but are they still themselves? Or are they becoming something else? Now, these aren't rewards. They're not punishment. They are evidence. Evidence that your player character has survived many things that a normal person never could. Every mark says, something happened to me. One thing that surprised me while playing with this system in my Samhain campaign is that the players don't necessarily want to shy away from the horror. Sometimes they chase it. They're curious. They want to know what happens to my character. What scar will I carry? How will this experience change my character? They're not trying to win. They're exploring who their character is becoming. How, in a very real sense, that the Samhain Vale is changing them. Here's why it's called Hearth and Horror. Horror isn't the goal. Home is. Horror builds, right? Players begin looking back towards the village or the town. They want rest. They want to recover. They want to sit around a warm fire. They want to protect the parts of themselves that still feel human. Suddenly going back to town isn't just for re-equipping. It's not just bookkeeping. It means something. It's actually survival. Things that could be a part of your hearth are the stories my grandmother used to tell me. Drinking at Tavern Sweeney in Ravengrave, visiting the gravesite of my mother, and anything that a player could create or make up for their player character. And this kind of works as an abbreviated backstory. It tells us who the character is. The players can now use these hearths to combat the horror. So here's the cycle. You come into a haunted site, and I give everyone one of these tokens. You now have one horror. The next time something happens, maybe a host of ghosts pops out of nowhere and frightens everyone, you gain another horror. And then after that dies down, maybe later on in the session, a werewolf pops out, freaks everyone out, and then I hand them another token. They now have 3 horrors. Now they have a choice. Make one of your hearths shaken or gain a mark of horror, such as night terrors. You often awake in the middle of the night screaming and covered in sweat. All of these marks come back to me as the game master, and then the cycle starts over. And again, if the player decides to take a shaken condition to their hearth, then they don't get that mark. But that hearth cannot be called upon again, but you still have 2 more. The cycle continues, and you gain more and more horrors until your hearths are depleted, or you can extinguish them, and that's talked about in the book. It may seem like a lot, but it's very fluid at the game table. This isn't punishment, it's not insanity, it's transformation of the character. Every campaign changes the characters through experience points, equipment, and new features that you get upon level up. But I think Hearth and Horror asks something a little bit more. How has this campaign shaped who this character is? Especially after experiencing haunted locations, horrific monsters, hair-raising events that twisted their innocence. Because someday the villagers are gonna whisper when you pass by. Children may stare. A dear friend notices a new streak of gray in your hair. Your hands may not look entirely human anymore, but you survived. You didn't come home the same. You changed. Marks of horror aren't rewards. They're not punishment. They're proof. Proof that your character survived something that most people never could. Sign up for the Samhain Vale newsletter at samhainvale.com. Also, if you're interested in the beta version of the Welcome to the Samhain Vale zine, you can get that at my Patreon. Speaking of which, thank you to all of my Patreon supporters for making this video possible. Without you, none of this happens. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, everyone. Thanks for stopping by Agronax Studios today. We'll see you on the next one. Later.